Did you see the stylish?
Welcome to the Young IPA podcast. I'm James, this is Pete.
G'day everyone.
And we are not dead. So if you were listening to last week's show, you heard our experiment at the end of the show. Pete and I confirmed not dead. Don't know what that means in the grand scheme of things about people's involvements with Epstein, but we're not dead.
Well, I reckon give it another week because we could be, a long way down the list.
Yeah,
maybe
there's a lot of
through
people.
a few more important people before us.
I can't think of any off the top of my head that would be. Have you been followed at all, do you reckon?
No more than usual.
No
There's
more
always
than
a few
usual.
people tailing me, watching what I'm doing. So,
Yes, and I do talk to them daily. Anyway, we've got a big show for you guys coming up. We are going to be talking to Bridget Phetasy. If you are on Twitter, you've definitely come across her tweets before. She's got a whole bunch of followers. Her Twitter feed is awesome. Going to be talking a lot about culture wars and her story and stuff like that. It's a really fun interview. Then going to be talking to Dave Sharma, the member for Wentworth. He came on the show to talk a bit of foreign policy. He was down here for a foreign policy event last week. He and I got into it on Brexit, so stick around for that.
come and listen to the sheriff at work.
I did call myself the sheriff of Podcast Village for the rest of the week based on that interview. But it's up to you whether or not I'm a sheriff or just some other form of law enforcement. I don't know.
Not sure.
But I'm definitely the sheriff. Anyway, then we've got another round of the quiz, so that's also to look forward to. Anything you're looking forward to on the show, Pete?
Well, it's great to have Saul back from the Gold Coast. He was basically on the tear on the Gold Coast all week, so he's come back in one piece, which is good. Bridget Phetasy is world famous, so that makes us world famous by extension.
Yep.
And of course, a new segment that we are, what are we going to do? Give it a spin.
Give it a spin.
Straight after the interviews, so stick around for that.
So stick around for that. Just on Saul returning after a week off, I'll describe him as rusty. I don't know if that's unfair,
He's
but
very tanned.
Very tanned, but also a few cameras weren't set up quite correctly, as I can say, because he doesn't have a microphone to defend himself. But let's get into the show, Pete.
Okay.
Because there's one story that's been dominating headlines in Australia for the last week, and that is the bushfires that are happening in New South Wales, and we should talk about them. That's all anyone's talking about. So I think the angle we want to take is the fact that the Greens MPs are now coming out and saying, well, this is clearly a result of climate change and we need to address that. There's been some pushback from the coalition Labor, this isn't the time to talk about climate change while the fires are still going. I don't buy into that. I just think, let's talk about it. There's the idea that it's distracting from efforts to stop fires, which I don't see. It's not like anyone's grabbing firefighters themselves and just saying, do you mind appearing on television for 10 minutes to talk about climate change? And I don't think Adam Bant or Scott Morrison are personally putting out fires. So we could talk about it. So what do you reckon about it?
Well, I agree 100%. I don't think there's any right or wrong time to start talking about it. And the Greens are within their rights to raise these issues if that's what they believe. I don't begrudge them that. I begrudge them for being wrong.
That's a good point.
Which I'll get to in a sec. But as James has alluded to, we have had the blame game beginning. I just want to show you a quick bit of footage of Senator Jordan Steele, John, in the Senate yesterday. Saul, if you could roll the tape. Thanks, mate.
You are no better than a bunch of arsonists. Borderline arsonists.
So, James, do you ever find yourself saying something and then thinking, wow, am I really saying this? And then sort of walking it back a little bit? You're
Mid-sentence.
Semi-arsonist.
Borderline arsonists. Eventually it's okay, you might have met an arsonist once in your life. And then it's okay, you know the definition of the word arson. You just keep winding it back until you stop.
So I hear that to say, and basically that's been the thrust of the Greens argument all week. The Nats have been blaming the Greens for opposing burn-offs in bushfire-affected areas. So that's the other aspect of this. ScoMo's got dragged into it for saying the famous thoughts and prayers thing, which is a bit of a no-no these days, and has called for everyone to take it down a notch politically. But as we said, we don't begrudge the Greens for raising their point. We just begrudge them for being wrong. These bushfires, James, do not have anything to do with climate change. Do not have anything to do with the Australian...
Ever been in a sentence where halfway through you decided to wind it back?
It could happen to anyone, mate. It could happen to anyone. These to Australia's policies on climate change. So the Greens are blaming, ScoMo and the Labor Party for their policies, but Australia commits only 1.3% of emissions, right? So even if we packed up the whole show and went back from where we've all come from, it would make no difference. There'd still be bushfires. In 2018, the IPCC has only a medium level confidence of the link between climate change and drought, but this is confined to certain parts of the world, of which Australia is not one. So even the IPCC says there's no link between climate change and drought in Australia.
Isn't it amazing how quickly things have changed in the climate change change thing where the side saying, okay, everyone needs to turn down the alarmism is now quoting IPCC reports. That's how far things have got.
2 years ago, it was like, oh, the UN, I don't know what they're talking about. But
now it's like, listen to the UN.
Exactly right. So there's that. Andy Pittman from the ARC Centre of Excellence said there is no drying trend in the last 100 years. We don't understand what causes drought. And the one that I want to talk about most, and I'm going to show the graph on YouTube when Saul chucks it up, Bjorn Lomborg, right? So he says, climate change is making bushfires worse, but deaths from climate-related incidents are down 99% since 1920. And he's got other stuff, which I won't go through here, but he's got other stuff where he talks about that specifically in relation to bushfires. And the point is that, look, climate change might be making natural disasters worse. We don't know. I'm walking back again. But we've got technology and human ingenuity to fight this stuff better and deal with it better and survive more. Yeah. So that is the key point. So even if climate change is making all this stuff worse, we can adapt.
Yeah, and it's also like the thing that has helped people fight bushfires for thousands of years in Australia is burn-offs, and when you stop doing them, apparently things get a bit worse. Like, I don't know how people didn't see that particular thing coming as well.
Yeah, that's right. And also, farmers being able to manage their own land and burn off.
Exactly.
They're sort of constrained a bit with that.
All right, cool. So that's all we're going to talk about for the bushfires. So,
and of course, our thinking about the people that are affected.
Oh, yes. Good point. And all right, so we'll now go over to Heroes and Villains segment. So Saul, just going to wait for the moment to... No, he's not going to do it yet. All right,
it's an early Heroes. Wait. I tell you said he was rusty. You said he was rusty.
The king of rustiness, Peter. The king of rustiness doesn't have the grunt freedom of grunt snort. Oh, whatever. I'm giving up.
It'll be added in post.
This podcast is drunk already. Anyway, this is the Heroes and Villains segment where we award the snort of freedom from Grunt the Pig, Grunt the Freedom Pig, I think as we called him, for people that have stood up for heroism, for liberty, and against tyranny around the world. Yeah. Pete, who have you got this week for us?
Saul's still in bedroom on the Gold Coast. All right, so... No, my hero this week, Geelong councillors. The Geelong councillors. Now, we've always bagged these councils that have these climate emergencies, like what is a climate emergency and what is like...
And what will my council do with it?
Murrulbark Council do about it. Anyway, we've had an incident in Geelong where councils have put up this motion to have a climate emergency in Geelong, but the councillors have voted it down on the back of Geelong Mayor Stephanie Asher and Councillor Eddie Contelge. Eddie, I've butchered your surname there and I apologise. They kiboshed the Geelong climate emergency a few weeks ago.
Underrated word.
Exactly right.
Anytime you hear the word kiboshed, it's a good day.
Yeah, well, that's what they did. And so that's great. Now, they've also found themselves on a 3-person environmental committee, Stephanie Asher, Eddie Contelge, and Sarah Mansfield, who is the Greens councillor who put forward the climate emergency declaration. So she's deputy chair. It's a 3-person committee. They're going to have a few heated discussions. And this is an example to all those councillors out there who think that they have to go along with a climate emergency, whatever that may mean. You don't. Follow the example of these two.
I feel really bad for the climate campaigners in there because if your local government won't sign off on there being a climate emergency, where do you go from there?
Oh, I don't know.
In the legal system,
highest office in the land.
No, I think it's the reverse because in the legal system, you've always got like one court higher that you can appeal to and eventually you run out. In the climate emergency game, you've got to start at federal and then you work down to state and then you work down. But once the local council says, look, there's no climate emergency, I don't know who you can appeal to.
Well,
who's the lower form of authority?
It's only a matter of time before, cafes and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Does this particular barista support the climate emergency?
Yeah. If you know of a cafe, write in.
Very good. All right, my hero of the week is... where were you going? Tactical Ops Brewery. So they have released the best marketing campaign I've ever seen. It's on the screen right now. On the bottom of their beer cans, they have the date of expiration and then just written underneath, Epstein didn't kill himself.
Is that the date of expiration?
Well, it's a date.
Is that the date that he died?
I know because that date is today and, very...
they did the date backwards in America.
Pete's apparently the old switcheroo. That's Pete's theory. I love this idea. Who wants nutritional information anyway when they're drinking a beer? Just have real information. Yeah. All right? No one cares about calorie intake. They do care, did Epstein kill himself or not?
Yeah, or they know.
And the other thing is the CEO of the brewing company has said, hey, what if we do this? And then they made a limited supply of this. They're hoping the controversy is going to help sell the product. On the limited supply... Fix that.
Yeah.
That should not be limited. These cans are going to sell out immediately.
People have to know.
Get the word out.
People have to know.
Absolutely. All right. Let's go over to the villain segment. So this is the Walter Peck Villainy Award for people that have stood up for tyranny and against freedom and justice.
Yeah.
And Pete, who have you got this week?
Well, no, Saul hasn't got this run ready either, but that's all right. So last week on Q&A was a specialist feminist edition because feminists never get a platform on the ABC. So I'm glad they've finally been given a platform on Q&A last week. So not the week we just had, but the week before. Now, a bloke from the audience asked, and I'm sure a lot of you have already seen this, whether it was okay to use violence if you're not achieving your aims through the normal political process. Egyptian feminist Mona El-Tahawi said this.
When I'm asking, how many rapists must we kill until men stop raping us?
Now, there was a 5-minute segment where there was heaps of stuff like that, but I don't want to include it all because it does go for 5 minutes. Other panellists more or less agreed with that. Or
No, just agreed.
Yeah.
There was one that remained silent and then afterwards said, that got a little out of hand, but everyone was like, how can I support violence even more loudly than the person that just spoke?
That's right. And Yuka Gori said, let's burn stuff repeatedly, which I thought was amusing. Now, in response, the ABC apologised and pulled the episode from all platforms. So my villain, James, is not the people on the panel. That's just their opinion. There's lots of people that think stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's okay with me. My villain is Q&A because this is exactly the same cancel culture that we are always talking about on this show.
Yes.
You know, the fact is a lot of people that are very privileged like those people that work in universities, work in corporations, work in government, think this stuff. And it doesn't do anyone any favours by sweeping under the carpet.
Oh, yeah. It's a perfect, and I know ABC is not the government, but it's like the perfect
Yes,
argument
it
for free. Well, it's sponsored by the government. But when people say freedom of speech is really good because, stupid people get to broadcast how stupid they are and you can defeat them. This is it in action.
Exactly
We've
right.
got 4 people going how good's violence? And you just go, you know what? Maybe there's some other things I need to interrogate about what they say. If you're agreeing with things up to that point and then you hear that and you just go, ooh, don't know about that part. Anyway.
People had a crack at Fran Kelly, who's the host.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Sorry. And I just thought she didn't do anything wrong. That's what they thought. And she went with it.
Sorry, the reason people are having a crack at Fran Kelly is because that she didn't challenge anyone. And she subsequently spoke to The Australian and she said that, she should have asked them to clarify and probably push back a little against it. And she said, I was waiting for another panelist to do it. She figured that at least one person was going to be like, hang on, ladies, do we need to actually be violent? Her direct quote, I thought there would be a range of views on this panel. As it turned out, there was not a lot of disagreement on the panel and it was up to me to challenge Mona's assertion. Has she ever watched the show?
Yeah, exactly.
If you're trying to be, and she is, one of the finalists to take over from Tony Jones and you're shocked that there wasn't disagreement,
Well,
I don't know if you're up to it.
Well, wasn't that an interesting turnout during the week?
Yes.
Hamish McDonald.
I didn't see
Got
that. Got the nod. All right. Well, I suppose they were just Fran, if you are not able to realise that people are going to agree on Q&A panel because we book people very, very selectively just for that, maybe it's not for you.
There you go. Yeah. So unlucky there.
All right. Cool. My villain this week. Sorry, Hillary Clinton was a hero, and how things have changed.
She was
one of my hero 3 weeks ago. Yeah. She's now a villain. She is currently on a book tour for her new book, The Book of Gutsy Women, which she's co-written with her daughter. She was on a British radio show. I think it was called. I can't remember who the name was.
Barnett.
It'll be on this clip. Emma Barnett Gets Answers.
Yeah.
What a name for a show.
Good name.
Can we rename our podcast that?
Do we get answers?
James and Pete Get Answers.
I think we ask questions.
All right, you listen to that Dave Sharma interview and you figure out if I get answers or not. Anyway, so Hillary Clinton's on the show and Emma Barnett asks, why didn't you include Margaret Thatcher in your book?
Yeah.
You'd think that's a gutsy woman. Even if you don't agree with her, gutsy. Here's Hillary Clinton's response.
Well, she does, but she doesn't fit the other part of the definition, in our opinion, which really is knocking down barriers for others and trying to make a positive difference. I think the record is mixed.
All right, so just for the people playing at home, if you are the first female prime minister in 258 years of British politics, then you have not knocked down enough barriers for others.
That is unbelievable. Margaret Thatcher saved Great Britain
in 258 years.
Yeah, and she saved
not enough
the country.
barriers.
She saved Great Britain, and they talk about gutsy.
Yeah,
we're going to invade the Falklands. I don't care if they're ours. They're ours. Love it. Oh God, I love Margaret Thatcher.
Okay, but I'm with you on that. But even if you don't like Margaret Thatcher, 200. I'm going to say it again. 258 years.
Yeah, no, look, I agree.
All right.
I was very jealous because you found this and
Yeah.
I'd already organised my villain. I really wanted to do this.
Yeah, I knew you would, but I sent it to you. I'm just like, Pete, this should be yours.
She told George W. Bush not to be wobbly. Don't get wobbly now, George. Nah, she's not gutsy enough. Sorry.
The other part of it is the people that are in the Book of Gutsy Women, the Clinton books,
Okay.
According to the Associated Press, include members of Clinton's family and friends. That's less of a barrier, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be cynical.
Yeah.
But is it like one was the first woman leader of a country? I almost was by 70,000 votes, whatever it was. Maybe a bit of jealousy at play.
Good point.
Or maybe it's just political.
I think it's just political.
Yeah, whatever.
It could be jealousy. Who knows?
Bit of both.
We are not in Clinton's circle of family and friends, which
Not
is
yet.
why neither of us made the book. All right. That is it for the start of the show.
Yep.
And we are now going to go to Bridget Phetasy, then Dave Sharma, and then the quiz.
Go.
Okay, someone I'm very excited to speak to. It is Bridget Phetasy, absolute Twitter star, host of also the podcast Walk-ins Welcome, and the YouTube show Weekly Dumpster Fire. Bridget, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so Bridget, Barack Obama this week called out wokeness and cancel culture, which is a classic boomer move in my books. Is it time to cancel Obama?
No, but I figured they were going to come for him eventually. I'm actually surprised he wasn't already canceled.
So what's the latest with that, Bridget? Is he? Are there any moves to cancel him? We tend to get news a little bit slower out here in Australia. What's the latest?
They did. There was an opinion piece that basically compared him to a white conservative man. So I think he has been canceled. But it seems more like a class war. You know, I think a lot of this that appears to be wokeness, or I think it's people saying like, well, of course these privileged people can say this. We're coming for your money.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad they said that they reminded of a white conservative man, because it was definitely something I kept on thinking in the 2008 primaries was like there's so many similarities between him and a white conservative man. But like one of the things I really wanted to talk to you about was your article, The Battle Cry for the Politically Homeless, which I think is still your pinned tweet on Twitter. And I thought it was such a fantastic article, and I wanted to talk to you about that. So let's start with like, who are the politically homeless?
I think that there's a large population of people who can't really get on board with the rhetoric of the current administration, the demonization, a lot of the corruption. And then they're also seeing, I always make the joke that I would be, there will come a day where something will come into the news about the current administration. And I'm like, that's it. I'm marching, I'm taking to the streets, I'm joining the resistance, and then I'll go, in my attempt to go sign up for the resistance, someone would be like, what pronouns do you go by? And I would be like, I'm out.
Exactly. So was that issue going to be the Trump dog Photoshop? The fact that he can get away with that, the fact that he can just willingly put something out like that fake news?
I feel like that's the least of the worries that we have. That's what I was saying this week on Dumpster Fire. Actually, is he's so outside norms that in order to evaluate him from an intellectually honest point of view, you have to say, and especially if you're somebody who, like myself, comes from a liberal background and was never really exposed to conservative media, what is something that this president is doing that all presidents did? What is something that's outside the norms, even for conservatives, which is where I think when you read like never Trumpers, like Tom Nichols or Jonah Goldberg or people who are lifelong conservatives, you can see where that differentiation is. And then what is the things that he's doing that are outside of the norm that are like chase the shiny thing? He's just a 12-year-old with a Twitter account. And what are some of the things that we actually need to push back against because they undermine democracy? Like, parsing all of that is very hard. And most people just don't want, it's much easier to just decide you're in a tribe and And on the left, people will say, don't both sides of this stuff. It's not even the same. And from my perspective, a lot of the authoritarian language policing and the canceling of people and publicly shaming people, that is seems to be more of a leftist phenomenon than anything. So, I feel like there's like different versions of fascist kind of, adjacent-ish encroaching on all sides. And I think most people fall in that politically home list where they're able to see this and say, well, like that, I don't want socialism and I don't want, but I also don't want like just this shit show that's on, I don't know if I can swear.
A little bit of swearing's okay.
Clown show that's on the right. So that kind of is what inspired the piece, is that I feel like, there's a lot of ideologues who have the microphone, and in the middle of that are people who don't really prescribe to, they're not on board with either one of those extremes.
Bridget, clearly you're very anti-woke among other things. It's just occurred to me that as far as I know, you have never been cancelled unless I've missed something. If that's the case, how do you think you've got away with it?
Never been canceled I don't know. So I was kind of unceremoniously dumped from Playboy. Now, whether that was canceled, I don't think that I could call it that. It wasn't like publicly everyone was calling for my head. It's harder to cancel somebody like me. I think what are they going to take from me? I have my own thing. And so they could boycott my sponsors. They could boycott my being on Patreon. They could boycott me being on Twitter. But I'm not saying anything hateful, and I'm certainly not saying anything that is completely unreasonable. In many instances, I'm just speaking a pretty commonly held, if not privately held, belief that a lot of people feel like they can't say because they work at corporations or institutions or universities, or they're worried that their friends in their liberal cities will come after them or whatever. So I don't think that, I'm not like some radical out there trying to start like any kind of, I don't want to fuel the culture war. If anything, I really think that people should be trying to talk more across the aisle than less.
Yeah, so you talked about how everyone's becoming quite polarized and tribalized. I remember I was watching this interview with Jonathan Haidt, and he was talking about how in the 90s, if you got someone's political beliefs on, say, gun control, it was somewhat of a predictor of how they'd feel about everything else, like healthcare and stuff. But today, it is almost clear. Once you go, like a Beto O'Rourke gun control position, you're 100% going to fall into this healthcare position and this other position on this other topic. Do you reckon people are becoming more tribalized like that, and how do we stop it?
I don't know that they actually are, because from, obviously I attract a crowd that's politically homeless, and so it's self-selecting the emails and the completely anecdotal evidence that I have at my disposal. But I hear from a lot of women who ask me, why can't there be a candidate that supports my right to have guns and my right to do with my body what I will. So I don't know that. And there used to be a lot more nuance around conversations like abortion and gun control. And I just think that social media turns everything, I always call it the flattening. It flattens everything and everyone into this two-dimensional political abstraction. And then everyone starts engaging as if they're political abstractions, and it leaves very little room for nuance. Even with the abortion debate, I think most people are squishy. Most pro-lifers who are reasonable are willing to say, maybe come back, compromise. And most people who are pro-abortion are willing to say, within a certain amount of time. And that discussion just isn't even had anymore. Now it's 9 months or nothing. And I think in the middle of those discussions, and those topics, a lot of voices are getting lost because nobody is speaking for them.
All right, this might be related to a word that you've invented called Phetasy, which is you've named after yourself, I've noticed. So that's an interesting development. Now, this word, according to...
It's a long story.
That's all right. We've got a few minutes. So this on your website says, when reality becomes parody, when parody becomes reality, irony squared, the age we're living in now. So you've named this after yourself. Do you think politics and culture and all the rest of it is more ridiculous now than in the past? And explain what Phetasy means.
Okay, so first things first. Phetasy, I didn't name myself after it. What happened was I started a company I made up a word to describe a phenomenon, this phenomenon of reality becoming parody or parody becoming reality that I was observing like in 2002, 3, 4, 5. And then I started my company in 2005, called it Phetasy, defined the word. And then when social media came about, I didn't trust social media. So I used Bridget Phetasy since I figured I was going to try and get this word out, and it was my brand. And I just used it as my last name because I didn't want to use like my real last name publicly on these things that were brand new, which looking back was an inadvertently genius thing to do. It was not intentional. I wish I could say it was. And, so the word it's like we've grown into the word. I always had a very hard time explaining it to people. It's much easier now when headlines read like parody. And I'm not sure if this is just the accelerating effect of postmodernism with technology, where everything becomes mediated, and so those lines get so blurred that it's almost inevitable that irony starts doubling back on itself and becoming literal.
Yeah, I'm completely with you about like the fall of journalism. I mean, like last week, I know I brought it up in this interview already, but the people going after Trump because of the Photoshop of the dog with the Medal of Honor, like. How do you look at yourself in the mirror if you're a journalist and you've genuinely sent a email going, well, we need to find out where this dog Photoshop came from?
It's so crazy to me because they walk into his trap, and it's like they step on the same rink over and over and over again. And I don't know how you don't check yourself as a journalist. So how are you reporting on the president sharing a meme as if he's sharing a doctored photo and trying to undermine national security without recognizing that you're only giving him exactly what he wants and only proving what he says about the corporate media being biased and a joke as accurate. So there's so many good journalists who work tirelessly, and it's such a thankless job, particularly local journalists, which is being destroyed. And even, there are big pieces that are, and so I hate that all journalism, which I feel is such an important profession, is being reduced to this, but they are not doing themselves any favors. Even like that headline with the terrorists that we killed.
Yeah, al-Baghdadi.
Where all the Washington Post, the Washington Post and the New York Times were like, oh, the austere scholar. They cannot. And, people joke about Trump derangement syndrome, but it is real. It is like a real thing that will be in the DSM someday.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think I like to clarify that I don't think it's just on the left. I think there are two strains of Trump derangement syndrome, and it's the resistance strain, which is everything somehow is Trump related. And these people can't think about him all day long and try to vilify him. And then there's the MAGA strain in which he's like a God king and can do no wrong, and they cannot see anything possibly corrupt or cynical or bad about him. And I actually think the majority of people don't live in either one of those places. Unfortunately, the loudest people do live in those places, and they have that microphone, and it's destructive. You know, and what worries me, and this is something I wrote about. I don't even think this article's up on Playboy anymore because they wiped everything, but now it seems like they're slowly putting things back up. Probably because I'm talking about the articles that I wrote for them, and they realize it's good for traffic. But I worry that it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy for the left, where these people, and this is what's so destructive, you would rather that he actually is Hitler so that you can be right than recognize that he's maybe just a fucking idiot and kind of ineffective and maybe isn't as bad as you think, and he is doing things that are corrupt, and those are the things we should push back against. But by chicken littling and calling him this extreme dictator, you're undermining your credibility. It's like crazy to me. That's what's so frustrating to me. How badly they want him to be this thing so that they can be right. And how can you not see that? Like how dangerous that is.
Now, Bridget, you say that you're politically disinterested, but based on that answer and based on Dumpster Fire, your weekly podcast, which is awesome and we love and everyone should check out, you do talk about politics a lot. What keeps bringing you back to politics?
I don't know. I don't feel like it's politics, though. I'm not a policy wonk. I think it's more culture. So I think that, like Breitbart said it, I think all politics happen downstream of culture. So I'm much more, I'm like intuitive about this stuff. I'm just more observing the culture and the culture war. And then I see how it plays out in politics, but I'm by no means somebody who's paying, detailed attention to all the policies. And if I were to go on some show and talk about them, I would be the idiot that I know that I am.
We do that on our show just as well. So now, Bridget, I know we're calling you at a bittersweet time for us both. Beto O'Rourke has just said he's out of the presidential race. I'm personally inconsolable. There were so many stories, there were so many speeches and Instagrams I'll never have the opportunity to laugh at because they'll never exist. What's his legacy to you?
Oh, God. That guy is so ineffective. I mean, I think I said it on Joe Rogan. I was like, he's like basal skin cell cancer. It's like it wants attention, but it's completely ineffective. I just feel like that's his legacy. It's like he's like what a day patient can't, like an outpatient cancer. Like he just doesn't. He just seems like such a little. I said it on Twitter too, that he's the guy that breaks up with you because he needs to go find himself. Like he just strikes me as such a. I don't know.
That was the best tweet. I actually roared out with laughter when I read that one. It's so true.
What is that though? What is that about him? Is it just that he's like a pussy? Like, what am I picking up on there? I just don't know. I don't know. He's one of those guys that you're like, oh, I feel like he'll be wearing a scarf any day now.
Absolutely. All right, Bridget, thank you so much for coming on the show. Make sure you're downloading Walk-Ins Welcome, the podcast, and make sure you're subscribed to Weekly Dumpster Fire. It's such an awesome show. Bridget, this was awesome.
Thank you so much, guys.
Okay, we now welcome on to the show Dave Sharma, the member for Wentworth. Welcome to the show.
G'day, good to be with you.
All right, so Dave, we've got a lot to talk about with you because you've got a fascinating backstory. There's a lot of issues we want to talk about. You're Australia's youngest ambassador to Israel. We've got the event Liberal Values Beyond Our Shores, which is taking place tonight, but last week as people hear this.
Yep.
I knew I would stuff that up.
I'm not quite sure when it is now.
I've got no idea. There's also foreign affairs, but firstly, I want to get to the main thing I want to ask you, which is you once ran a marathon in 3 hours and 17 minutes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's
Why?
my best time.
Why would you?
You don't have to run marathons.
There's other ways of traveling.
I think I've only done 3. That was my best time, the Canberra one. I'd love to be one of these people that can crack 3 hours, but I think I'm probably a bit too old now to do it. They're just an immense test of mental strength, I think. I kind of like them for that. But the training commitment, you need to do them. I've done a few. I've do a half marathon every year, but a full marathon just like takes it out of you. It's a lifestyle changer.
I'm more used to the 500-metre jogs when I'm late for a train.
To the tram or something.
Yeah, exactly. But let's talk about Liberal Values Beyond Our Shores. It's an event you're at with Senator James Patterson and Greg Sheridan, so now 3 friends of the show. So what are the Liberal values that are beyond our shores?
Well, I think they're really about, there are domestic values, but, multiplied. So it's things like the rule of law, but operating on an international level. It's about, the peaceful settlement of disputes. It's about respect for people's rights. It's about free trade, open commerce, the rights of individual states to organise their own affairs and interact with the world as they wish. So just as, we put a big emphasis as Liberals on the rights of individuals in Australia, well, so the current system of states is really based on the sovereign equality of states and the idea that states are autonomous actors. There's no hierarchy amongst them. We're all, retain certain fundamental rights and attributes, and that's really been the basis on which the world's been structured since the end of the Second World War. And it's really those elements which are coming under strain in the last few years.
You describe yourself, you have been described as a bit of a foreign policy hawk. We're going to talk about the Foreign Influence Transparency Scheme in a second, but I just think more broadly, as someone who's a classical Liberal and a bit of a foreign policy hawk, how do you address the tension between maintaining our liberalism and threats from aggressive overseas powers?
Look, it's a tough one. I mean, I'd sort of describe myself as a realist rather than a hawk. Okay. I think sometimes the people who use that term hawk are kind of too much idealists, I think. They don't actually. So I'm always a firm believer in dealing with the world as it is. I don't have any great ambitions or pretensions that we can change the character of regimes overseas, which is often sort of at least in US foreign policy terms, hawkishness often means you want to do, you want to change the internal politics of countries. I'm realistic enough to know that's difficult, but I am very mindful that we should be a little less naive and a little more clear-eyed about some of the threats and challenges facing Australia. We've had a remarkably good run since the end of the Second World War in terms of, a world order that really suits our interests, an order that's supportive of trade, no real threats to peace and security in our region. The US is the untrammelled superpower, and all of those things are being tested or probed in some way or other. And it would be naive to think that we will just sort of sail through this blindly. So I think that does mean we sometimes have to have difficult conversations domestically, and it does sometimes mean that we have to have difficult conversations with our big trading partners as well. But I think if we want to keep Australia as it is, with the freedoms and liberties we enjoy today and the lifestyle we know, then we will have to have those sorts of discussions.
Yeah, because for so long Australia was very far away from where the eyes of the world were, and you just think the last 10 years that's no longer the case. We are smack bang in the middle of it, and it's a whole different role we're playing.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, the tyranny of distance was always for us a real strategic blessing, because it meant we were a long way from the sort of centres of conflict in the world and problems couldn't reach our shores. Now, it's the Indo-Pacific that's the region where everything's happening, and new sort of tools, technologies, capabilities, particularly cyber and electronic stuff, means that physical distance is no longer the buffer or the barrier that it once was.
Yeah, cool. So we want to talk about one thing, which is the Foreign Influence Transparency Scheme, which is just coming out on the last couple of days. So we've seen Conservative figures Andrew Cooper and Tony Abbott targeted under a measure that was meant to curb the Chinese influence that you're talking about. Is it possible to rein in the bureaucrats who act politically like that? And is this occurrence an argument for smaller government?
Look, I think I understand the intent of the law and what it was designed to achieve, and I think it's an important one, and it's one I'd continue to support. But look, clearly the implementation here has gone, gravely awry, and perhaps it's drafting elements we need to look at, like tightening up the implementation guidance, not the legislation itself. But also, I think we've got to rein in the bureaucrats a bit more, because this is really, this is legislation written by the Parliament. It's not directed at any particular nation, but I think the idea that the first case they open or the first file they open is going after someone who I don't think even his staunchest political opponents would call into question his patriotism is just ridiculous. I mean, it's jumping the shark. It's crazy.
How do you rein in the bureaucrats? Because we sort of feel like, you win elections, but the free market, conservative, liberal people win the election, but the bureaucracy largely remains the same, and they still have a fair bit of control. How do you rein in a bureaucracy like that?
Look, I think it's incumbent on. I mean, I've been in the federal bureaucracy, so I've seen it from both sides, and knowing that, it's really incumbent on it's really incumbent on ministers to run their departments, not departments to run their ministers, if I can put it that way. And often, if you come in, you're inclined to defer to the expertise of your department because they've been doing the issues for longer. But you do see this where, ministers become sort of spokespersons for their departmental interests rather than imposing their own interests on the department. In our Westminster system, it's elected representatives that have the say on this. And certainly when I was a bureaucrat, a federal public servant, there were decisions that I thought I wouldn't take because they were properly the domain of the political leadership. And, strangely enough, one of the reasons I was considered one of the more pro-Israel ambassadors we've ever sent to Israel was because I actually believed in listening to the elected government of the day and doing what I thought their view was on this relationship.
It's a novel concept these days.
So look, I think it's really, some of the bureaucrats, look, clearly in that case something has gone wrong. I don't know, someone should be held account for it. And I think, Christian Porter's done and said the right things in saying he's going to grip it up and speak to his departmental secretary and make sure it happens, because these sorts of interpretive decisions, there's some discretion there for the bureaucracy, but the intent's really driven by the political class.
Okay, cool. So we talked about the implementation, but as you said, the intention is understandable with China and all that. So what is your view on that? Because you say you're a realist and the rise of China being what it is, what is Australia's relationship with China going forward, do you reckon?
Well, it's not going to be an easy relationship, and I think we're better off if we're honest about that. And I think, people are increasingly being honest about that. We've got different political systems, we've got different histories, and we've got different views on a whole lot of international issues as well. Now that doesn't mean we can't or shouldn't try to have a productive partnership in areas where we can agree. And certainly there's a mutual benefit to us trading in the amount that we do. And I think it's always important that we stress that trade is an exercise in mutual benefit. Both sides benefit from it. It's not like China doesn't do us a favour by buying all our exports any more than we do it a favour by selling it, our iron ore. But I think, with that relationship in particular, we are going to have differences of views, and China, as it becomes a bigger power around the world, wants to exercise more influence. And up to a point we accept that, but we won't accept it up to a point where it's seeking to interfere with things that we consider to be our domestic domain. And this is, look, just as China would not welcome us as a government, getting involved in issues that go to the heart of their red lines, like the One China policy, Taiwan, Hong Kong, nor will we tolerate China seeking to do things that undermine our own system of government or values here at home. And I think it's important that we both respect each other's red lines there.
All right, so another big issue happening at the moment overseas is Brexit. How do you see that panning out? What do you think of Boris Johnson's deal, and what are the benefits to Australia from Brexit, if any, as you see it?
Look, I think I worry about Brexit for a number of reasons. The first one really is that it has undoubtedly sucked up all the political oxygen in the UK and Westminster, which means, just bluntly, that the UK is not able to play the constructive global role it has in the past as, one of the 5 nuclear powers, permanent veto seat on the veto-wielding seat on the UN Security Council. Normally we've relied upon the UK to be a kind of trusted ally on international issues, and they just don't have the bandwidth to do this because Brexit has become all-consuming. I don't think we'll necessarily get I don't think we'll get a clear result on the 12th of December.
That's what I predicted.
So
I'm glad to have on board, Dave.
So don't even bother holding it.
two of the great political minds in this country.
So then where does that leave us? Because whichever party is the largest, I don't think will have a majority in its own right. They'll need to cooperate with some sort of minor parties. It might be the Scottish Nationalists. You're going to have to trade a referendum on Scottish independence. It might be the DUP. What does that mean for the kind of Northern Ireland backstop issue? And look, the Lib Dems have got their own proposal. It's got to go. Basically, they want to stop Brexit. Labor's got this second referendum proposal. I worry because it's making the UK political system dysfunctional and has bad consequences for all of us.
Yeah, but going back to the idea of liberal values beyond our shores. I mean, 3 years ago, the British people overwhelmingly voted for Brexit, and you just think I can't think of a bigger liberal value than democracy. How do they still not have a Brexit? It's one of the biggest betrayals of our time.
Yeah, but I guess what I'd say there, I often draw this parallel to the referendum we had on the Republic in 1999. And at that time, John Howard, he's pilloried for it at the time, but rightly insisted that a particular model had to be put forward in that referendum. It wasn't just, do you want an Australian head of state or not? It was, what sort of Australian's head of state with what powers and how would they be elected? And of course, the option that was settled on was a president, quote unquote, that would be appointed by the parliament with largely, reserve and ceremonial powers, which people rejected. Brexit was an open-ended question that was put to the people, and they don't have a referendum tradition in the UK. It's non-binding. And I think fundamentally people, and this would be true, I think, of all the Tories, Brexit has been proven to be a harder thing to work out than they'd ever possibly conceive at the beginning. And so, I have some sympathy with the view that, look, you need to look at this again, because there's now, if you've got a clear option, and hopefully this election will do this, because there is a Brexit plan on the table that Boris Johnson has put there, and the people should have a vote on that now. But it's, I'm just not sure we'll get a clean result.
But if I could compare it to another thing, which isn't a referendum, but I can't remember what the ended up word being, but basically like the gay marriage vote in Australia, or like the poll or whatever it was. But the plebiscite. Thank you. Yeah. But could you imagine, because that was kind of open-ended as well, and there wasn't an idea of what was going to happen to churches. But if 3 years later there was still no gay marriage in Australia, the people would be in the streets. This would be ridiculous.
Yeah, true. No, look, I think that's a fair point. I think probably the result for that was a little more Brexit was sort of a 52-48. The gay marriage, I think, was about 2/3, 1/3 nationally, so it was a little more overwhelming. And look, it was. I guess it was a less complicated thing to do. Unwinding 45 years of entanglement with the European Union is more difficult than changing the definition of marriage in a single piece of legislation, which is what we had to do. So I think that's the difference there.
All right, I don't think we're going to get you over the line that it's a gigantic betrayal of democracy. Let's
no, I'm afraid not.
Let's move things on to your win in Wentworth. So I want to ask you, who played a bigger role in your victory, Get Up or Alex Turnbull?
Look, I think thankfully neither of them were much of a factor the second time around. They were certainly factors in the by-election. In the by-election, it was the one show in town at the time. It was the only by-election happening. A lot of people jumped on it, and causes jumped on it. Get Up was there. There was the Stop Adani people. There was sort of, Animal Justice Party. There was the Voluntary Euthanasia Party. A whole lot of single-issue campaigns came and did it, which meant it was a pretty complicated landscape. Alex Turnbull, got involved as well. But I think what was good about the general election is that people tuned out. A lot of those distractions went elsewhere. They went to other seats. They went to Warringah, for instance. But they also, I think people realised that it was serious now, and they had to make a choice between two alternatives. We have a two-party system in Australia. Australian politics generally works best that way. And so a lot of those people just didn't get the oxygen they did in the by-election.
All right. Well, I know us nepotism boys have to stick together, but I got to give it to Alex Turnbull because he's got the reverse Midas touch when it comes to politics. Did you find anything left behind by the former Prime Minister in the electoral office of note?
Well, so Karen Phelps actually moved into the office after Malcolm. So no, it was Malcolm's office and then Karen's office and then mine. No, I think she left a whiteboard with a few sort of inspirational sayings written on it.
Oh, really?
That was
love.
I can't actually remember what the sayings were. We took a photo of it at the time because we thought we'd want to remember them. And I'm not sure if they were meant to send some sort of subliminal message to me or not. They just forgot to erase them. But that was about all that was of note. Actually, and a lot of purple pens. Purple was her campaigning colour. There's far more purple pens than I could ever make use of.
Yeah, purple's outside of electoral party platform writing on the signs. I don't know when I'd need a purple pen.
No.
Or unless I'm illustrating Grimace. I was going to ask the last question. Did Malcolm Turnbull's Breitbart subscription, was that still valid? We're still getting in the newsletters?
Yeah, it's turning up every week on the door. I always demand to make sure it gets put on my desk first, so I read it first.
All right, fantastic. Dave Sharma, member of Wentworth, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks so much, guys.
Okay, welcome to another round of Hey, What Did We Miss? The Young IPA quiz. Very big quiz panel for the people today. So we've got Pat Hannaford. You've been on before. You've won a few times.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I might get one question other than the Who Am I this week.
No, you got to keep it up. You got to let these two fight it out for the regular questions, and then just wait for the Who Am I
for the scraps.
Morgan Begg, research fellow, dressed up for the occasion, I might add, with a very, very nice green tie and green jacket combination.
I was going to come in complete casuals, then remembered, young IPA podcast.
I think this is your casuals.
Yeah.
Morgan dressed down.
Yes, and I just only can hope that you find Colonel Kurtz eventually.
This is not a dressing up tie, I got to say. It's a pretty
It is
casual.
me and Pete, because if you look at Pete, there's a noticeable downturn in
Is there?
wearing quality.
Mate, I've got a crown on, all right? I'm the king. No, I got the crown because I won last week for those listening.
And that is what they're playing for. So if it is your first quiz, 1 point on for correct answers and 1 point off for incorrect answers. We've got 9 questions and then a who am I with a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Buzzers are your first name. So Pat can do that. Morgan. That's good. Pete.
Roof.
For the roof seal.
Roof seal. Let's do it.
Okay,
Let's
sweet.
win.
All right, so this week we had the big report. 11,000 climate scientists from around the world talking about how much of a climate emergency there is. Name 3. Which fictional character was not among the 11,000 climate scientists listed?
Malcolm Turnbull.
He wasn't in there, but nor is he a fictional character, unfortunately. But anyway, so which of these following fictional characters was not among the 11,000 climate scientists listed? Mickey Mouse, Homer Simpson, Albus, Dumbledore.
Morgan. Homer Simpson.
Homer Simpson was not among it, so 1 point on for Morgan.
This is favouritism. I know these two just do Simpsons quotes to each other all day.
That is all we
don't
talk
know how
in.
that would have helped you in that instance, but there's something going on.
The only thing I remembered from that news story was the absence of Homer Simpson.
What a bloody outrage it was.
You've got a Google alert that says Homer Simpson story.
Didn't come up.
Didn't come across my desk. What has Boris Johnson given up until Brexit has passed? Roof.
Sex.
Really?
Roof. Being in the EU. No, not that either.
You're hemorrhaging points, Pete.
I was a point for both of those.
They're incorrect answers. They're good answers. Roof.
Drinking.
Drinking is correct. All right, -2 for Pete.
I knew it was
back.
one of those 3.
They're only the 3 things he does. So if you had to make one sacrifice, that was going to be it. All right. Evo Morales resigned as president of which nation this week?
Pat. Bolivia.
Yes, correct. Bolivia. Pat has already hit his KPI. He's answered one thing that is not the who am I. So
all bonus from here.
We got a hammock set up for you over there if you want to just wait out the next couple minutes. Which new streaming service was plagued by technical difficulties on their first day of release this week? Morgan.
Disney Plus.
Disney Plus is correct. And I just want to tell our listeners out there, maybe they're having a bad day, maybe things aren't going great, but at least you are not on the Disney Plus technical support team, because they had an absolute mare this week. Thousands and thousands of people just like, what the hell is going on? All right. Daniel Wild had an article in the Daily Telegraph on why Australia must withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement last week. What is the only nation in the world that the Climate Action Tracker website lists as having policies which are Paris Agreement compatible?
Roof. US.
Incorrect, the US. You hope, because of how much of it being admitted they are? Pat. The pregnant pause. We were discussing this before the show. That's not umming and ahhing.
There's only 200 countries.
Effective dramatic moment.
There is a time limit.
It's not. Is it Australia?
It's not Australia. Pat, point off for Pat. Does anyone have it?
I don't have it.
Morgan.
No,
it's
actually.
down to you. Okay, the answer is Morocco. That's the only nation in the world.
I got to say, that's. I'm
Paris.
not surprised that.
I edited that piece as well. I should have known that.
Yeah, you
really should know that.
Yeah, very keen eye. For
my crown almost fallen.
Well, it is. You can see it -3.
I just thought because the US doesn't have a Paris Agreement that they can't break it.
No, they're still in it. They're withdrawing from it.
You think they're like, we're compliant?
Well, yeah, I haven't said anything that I haven't followed up with.
No, they're still in it, but they're like withdrawing it. And Daniel's article is talking about why Australia should follow suit. Go to ipa.org.au if you want to.
Great.
It is a great article, and I just completely forgot that Morocco factoid. Yeah.
IPA.org.au if you want to read it. All right, so why aren't the Brexit Party competing in 317 seats in the... Pat.
This is an interesting
question.
No.
You jump in. That's the nature of jumping in, Paddy.
What if there was more? What if there was more?
The thing is...
You'd be worried.
This is a very subjective question.
Hang on, why? Well, it's because they want Brexit to happen.
See, the
Conservatives are the only ones who have a policy.
Yeah. I'll pay it.
In favour of Brexit.
Yeah, because they reached a deal with the Conservative Party. But I'll pay it because it is all Brexit related.
I'm not going to get
just after all these quizzes, like 4 quizzes, is finally a Brexit question.
Yes.
I'm not going to get that done.
I've been waiting all this time.
Yes. All right. What words have been banned from the set of the new James Bond movie? Pat.
Bond girl.
Bond girl is banned.
Terrible.
Yeah. For like
what?
You just can't say it. They're not Bond girls. You can't say it. They're independent women that just happen to have sex with James Bond.
So you're going to say like Bond woman or something?
I don't think you can even say that. I think it's strong independent female that just happens to have sex with James Bond in this movie.
Because she wants to.
Yes. All right. Score check. I'm
friend with
definitely going to wear the dunce hat this week. I don't think my scoring has been on top of things. But what I have, and Saul, chime in if I'm wrong, is -2 for Pete, 2 for Morgan, and 2 for Pat.
Ooh.
Okay, I haven't heard back from Saul. There's no way he's doing scores yet.
Saul's asleep.
Saul's left. He's off trucking somewhere.
He's not even over there.
All right, so question 8, I think it is. Qantas are trialing super long flights. These are direct flights from very long distances. They've done a New York to Sydney direct. Where is the next destination they're trying?
Roof.
London. London is correct.
Hang on.
This will revolutionise everything. Like, I do not, like, long flights stink. And if you can get away that they're direct, this is amazing.
Apparently they do.
There's a lot of furrowed brows around the quiz
Is that
panel.
saying Sydney to London?
Sydney to London.
Oh,
What did
okay.
I say?
I thought you meant New York to London.
No. They've done that before.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
going to
they
go
do
get
that.
that. I might go get that done anymore.
They've done that once or twice in New York to London direct.
Yeah.
Apparently
Sydney
flights
to London.
Apparently flights do stink when the person who opens the door opens it. Apparently, it absolutely
It's like
stinks.
a tube of fart.
Paddy Hannaford, this is a family podcast.
I thought you meant like if they open the door mid-flight.
When it lands and gets to its destination.
Yeah.
All right. Last question before the Who Am I, which is when Pat will come back in. Which Australian sports team negotiated an equal pay deal this week? Pat.
Ooh.
Matildas.
Matildas did indeed.
I was going to say the Deaners,
The what?
my cricket team.
How much are you guys getting paid?
Well,
This is
now
too
we're getting
much.
paid as much as, what's his name?
I don't know.
Aaron Moy.
Is he out?
No, he's just a Socceroo that it would be great to get paid as much as.
Right. Yeah,
No, we're still not getting paid.
All right. So, score check at the Who Am I. Pat is on 3. Morgan is on 2. Peter is on -1.
Ooh.
Pete can still win.
Yeah.
Pete can still win.
I can still win.
All right. So, who am I? Now,
Good question.
for 5 points, I died 13 years ago on Sunday.
So that's
Now,
2006.
I am just gonna reward myself because the one thing I get from the Who Am I is that every single person died 250 years ago that I do. 13. All right.
13.
This is relevant.
But that's
they're all
2006 for those who are not good at maths.
Thanks, Pete. That's
Carry the one. Yeah.
actually
You're
is
right.
helpful.
Yeah, so no, I don't know. I'm sure those guys don't know either.
Anyone want to make a guess? 5 points.
I won't risk it at this stage.
Won't risk it at this stage. Morgan
Do I?
Beck,
Am
very
I? I'm
conservative.
4 points behind, aren't I?
You are -1. Yes, 4 points.
Okay, well, I know I lose a point if I... Yeah, no, I'll wait till the next round. Then I'll equalise, then I'll win the tiebreaker.
I don't have a tiebreaker question. All right, 4 points. I was born in 1912 in New York.
Oh, well, that could be bloody anyone.
No, it can only be it can only be a select group of people. It can only be people that were born in 1912 and in New York.
Yeah, it
can't be anyone.
It's a figure of speech,
You
James.
can rule out Albert Einstein.
No, I don't know who it is either. Do you guys know?
I haven't. I don't want to risk it, but I haven't.
Don't want to risk it for the biscuit.
Ooh. No one?
No, I'm
Okay,
gonna wait for
interesting.
my
All right, 3 points. I was an advisor to both Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher.
Ooh.
Pat's thinking about it. It's thinking about it. He's leaned away. All right, Morgan
To
Beck,
both
still
of them.
nothing.
To both of them.
So Morgan 2, Pat is on 3. So
Wait, when you say like actually employed as an advisor,
just the advice. What do you want from me?
He gave advice, Pat.
What's your knowledge of the contract? What have you brought into this?
How much were
it was
they
an
paying?
NDA. I can't figure out terms of employment. There was an NDA. 2 points. All right, sorry, Morgan. This is your chance to win it.
Jeez.
2 points. I won the Nobel Prize in economics in 1976.
so it's Pat.
Pat,
The person I was thinking of is Milton Friedman.
and that's who it is. Patrick
But Milton
Hannaford.
Friedman was not an advisor to Thatcher.
Where's that dunce hat?
I want to restrict your crown access.
We'll look into it, and then immediately in the next section, if you're wrong, we'll just bag you on air without any chance of reply.
That's the
Feels like
Young
the
IPA
right thing to
podcast way. All right, cool. Well done, Pat. Thank you for getting it right and then having a go at me anyway. Real
That's
good
why,
teamwork.
that's why I asked the clarifying question.
Okay, whatever. We got more show for you guys after this.
Stay up.
Okay, welcome back to the show.
He's angry.
Here we go. Milton Friedman served as member of President Reagan's Economic Policy Advisory Board starting in 1981. And this is from the Telegraph obituary to Milton Friedman. He served as advisor to the Thatcher government from 1979 to 1990 as it developed a free market economy, low taxation, and the sale of state-owned industries.
Well, there you go.
Eat your words, Patrick Hannaford. Now, Patrick, when he was on the quiz, he raised the prospect of having to wear a dunce hat next week.
I believe it's appropriate in this instance.
I think we need to go a bit harder. So what I'm going to do this week is I'm going to buy a ring. And then next week on the quiz, Patrick Hannaford is going to have to kiss it.
Okay. With the dunce hat on.
With the dunce hat on. And if he does not kiss the ring, he will be forced to leave the studio.
Okay. Look,
so, Pat, I know you're listening.
Yeah.
I'm right. You're wrong. Kiss the ring.
Kiss the ring, Patty.
Give it a smooch.
Otherwise, don't come on.
All right. Let us get into some stuff that have made us laugh this week. I've already won.
Thank you, obviously, to Bridget Phetasy and Dave Sharma for coming on the show.
Oh, yeah, sure. But Pat, you're going to kiss that ring.
Yeah.
All right. Now, we teased this at the start of the show.
Yeah.
We want to... we've had Bridget on the show. We've had Dave Sharma on the show. We've had ministers on the show recently. We've had people who've... who was it? Andrew Shearer raised that he met...
I don't know what you're talking about.
Anyway, so we've had people that have met a very important guest that we've been circling for a while. We've been trying to get him on the show. And I think we now need a more direct route. So what is this new segment, Pete?
So this new segment's called Pete's Tweet.
Yep.
You'll note that Pete rhymes with tweet. What I've been thinking is I want to tweet more, right? And I always forget to, or I see someone I want to bite at, but I don't have the guts, so I don't. So I thought, what better way to make myself tweet more, like what a noble ambition that is, than to make it part of the show, Pete's Tweet.
Yeah.
Bolter liked it, so we're going to do it.
I did.
Bolter had a great idea for the first tweet.
Yes.
As you said, we want to aim big. James, I'll let you announce it because this is your party.
All right. For Pete's first tweet.
Yep.
Well, not first tweet, but like first tweet under the program of Pete's Tweet.
Yep.
We're going to try and get Donald Trump on the show.
We're going to try and get him on via Twitter.
Like Pete and I are now going to draft the tweet. Even though it's coming out from Pete's account, I do feel I should help you out as someone that's on Twitter, like 80 times a day?
Yeah.
I don't tweet, but I do read. All right, so what are we thinking?
Well, I just think let's go simple, at the real Donald Trump.
Yep.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
At the real Donald Trump, do you want to come on the Young IPA podcast?
I think that's a little too nice, and I think it doesn't really separate from the pack of thousands and thousands of notifications he's going to get every single day. So what I thought of, if we really wanted him on the show, and damn it I do, we got to neg him. We got to make him, we got to challenge his authority, maybe challenge him personally into coming on the show. So what I thought you could do, just say, come on the Young IPA podcast. The whistleblower said you wouldn't. That challenges him because now he's like, I'll show that whistleblower. I'll show him. That whistleblower said I wouldn't.
Come on the Young IPA
podcast.
So hang on, it's the real Donald Trump, isn't it?
Well, you can click on it.
That's the real. It's like,
All right. That's the right one.
Young James is very good with the technology. Okay. Donald Trump, come on the Young IPA podcast.
You are the slowest typer in the world.
What's the next bit?
I just said the whistleblower said you wouldn't.
We're going to get in trouble for this. I don't think so.
Mate, last week we said we had information leading to Hillary Clinton's arrest.
The whistleblower said you wouldn't.
All right, send it.
Do you want him in studio or on the phone? In studio or on the phone?
In studio. He comes to us.
In studio, please.
Yeah.
In studio is better, but can do on the phone.
Yeah. Just say 410 Collins.
I'm not going to say that. But can do better.
All right, can do
phone.
Can do phone. We'd push for studio pretty hard, though. All right, send?
Almost. I'm just going to write
Okay,
cheese.
cool. I'll just move on to the next segment while you do it.
God,
people... now we wait.
What if... Yeah,
the rod has been thrown out, and we will now see if the fish bites.
Let's do it.
All right. Okay, so next thing we want to talk about. So last week... a very viral news story went out. We talked about it in the quiz. 11,000 scientists from around the world wanted to unequivocally declare that the planet is facing a climate emergency.
Yes.
It was published in the journal Bioscience. Just show of hands, 11,000 scientists. That's why you need to listen to us because there's so many of us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as people can see if they're watching on YouTube right now, and if you heard the quiz, there were a few interesting additions to this one, including Mickey Mouse from the Mickey Mouse Institute in Nigeria. That was one of the signatories.
Could be real.
And Albus Dumbledore was another one. The principal. I'm not a big Harry Potter guy. Principal of Hogwarts.
Yeah.
That's not even good trolling. Like that is like base minimum trolling.
Yeah.
And it still got in.
So that's our view, isn't it? Our view is that people trolled the petition and put their names in.
That's what I'm thinking.
That's what
I don't think they were just actually making up numbers of just like, we have 10,000, let's go for 11,000 and let's go Albus Dumbledore and Mickey Mouse.
But what it does demonstrate is they haven't read it.
They haven't read it. They weren't fact checking the people that have signed the petition.
I mean, there could be other people in there that aren't. So the broader point is there could be other people in there that aren't genuine climate.
Yeah, because like Mickey Mouse, like
he might know.
That's base level. Like, how do you not even, if you had a petition of that many people, how do you not even control F Mickey Mouse? Because that's like the number one thing people are going to troll you with.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Albus Dumbledore as well. Like, it's not even like a SC Iantist or something like that, or PI Staker if you're a big Hot Fuzz fan listening. Like, base level trolling.
Yeah.
And then went straight through.
And these people, we're meant to believe these people that they know the Earth's going to end in 37 months.
Can't even check their own damn petition.
Struth.
All right. Another climate change one we got for you. So, Pete, talk to us about this one.
Well, this one was a piece written on Triple J Hack website last week by a fellow called James Purtle, and I hope I've pronounced your name correctly there, James.
He's definitely listening.
He's definitely listening, and he said, him and his missus had differing view over climate change. I'll read a part of the article. Are you going to waste? So essentially, he was out to dinner with his missus and a few other people, and he said, she said, are you going to waste your life worrying about climate change? She asked. Yes, the world is going to hell, but you need to enjoy yourself, she added. We all die someday. He writes, we broadly agreed on the facts of climate change and that the future was looking dark. Where we differed was how to properly respond. She wanted to keep living her life as normal, and I wanted to freak out. And then we broke up. Now, James Purtle's missus, if you're listening, or ex-missus, if you're listening...
More likely to be listening.
You've dodged a bullet.
Yeah, well done. Got out at a very good time.
James might turn out all right.
Yep.
But he's got to find himself.
Yeah.
He's got a bit of growing up to do.
Yes.
He's
only got 10 years left to do it in, apparently.
Well, exactly right.
I'm worried for him.
So, yeah, I don't know. Look, we've seen babies not born. We've seen, what's the other one? People sort of report with mental illness because of climate change. Now people are breaking up.
Well, I think you've fallen for his, what do they call it, gaslighting. Because if you go back to that headline, it says breaking up because of climate change. Yeah, breaking up over climate change is a direct thing from him. And he says, it's because we broke up because of climate change. No, you just suck.
You could have made it help together.
Like, climate change is just a symptom for a wider disease of you suck. Like, you're just a downer to be around.
Yeah,
like, the rest of that article is just him like, here's a conversation I had with a different person and we agreed we're all going to die. Here's a conversation with a different person and I agreed we're all going to die. Dude, what's the common denominator here? And it's not climate change.
Yep, no, look, exactly right.
All right, last thing we've got to talk about in the show, and I don't want to talk about this.
Not looking forward at all to this.
So... bit of slice of life. Now, Pete and I come to you with barrel fire takes all damn day, and you guys don't know a whole lot about us. But
don't tell him to say things like that, people.
You should, because I need more encouragement. Anyway, Pete, you have something that's not podcast related that's been eating at you. I sit next to you at work, I sit across from you, I just see your distant look in the eyes as if you wonder what has happened to the mighty Deaners cricket group.
Monday morning I roll in. So I play for the Deaners, a cricket club here in Melbourne. Now, we sort of had high hopes for this season. Thought we could make the finals, maybe go all the way.
Now, you don't just play for the Deaners. Like, you are almost head honcho, right?
Oh, I'm not. I mean, look, I'm a club legend gets thrown around, I guess. But, you make up your own mind. Look, we are 0-5 after 5 games. Our worst start in 26 years. Saul's running through a few photos on the screen.
Is that actually true?
I think it's an estimate because we got relegated 26 years ago.
Right.
We came straight back up.
Yep.
Not been relegated since then. So I'm just using it as a proxy.
Right, okay.
Certainly in my time, and I've been there for 15 years. So it's a terrible, terrible start. And I think James just wanted to put it out there to people if they've got any suggestions.
Well, so here's because... eventually when things are going badly, you need an external review, and I'm quite external. So I've put together some thoughts as to what I think might be happening down at the Deaners.
Oh, really?
I haven't gone to a game, but I'll give it a shot. And as Pete said, if you have your own theories or if you do want to offer Pete some advice, my emails are always open at jbolt@ipa.org.au, or just put out the Newshound beacon and I'll come over. But
get him
anyway,
on Twitter as well. If you
yes, James M. Bolt. Anyway, so... well, I'm looking at the Australian cricket team, and they had a return to form with the Ashes. So are there any wayward sons that need to be brought back into the fold and everyone forgets everything that ever happened because they hit a double century?
Not exactly. There's players we haven't got from last year that would be good to have them playing, but I don't know if they're wayward sons.
They're not wayward sons.
No.
All right. Interesting. Okay. Now, my second theory. Now, when the Deaners were doing well last couple of years, a few finals appearances, you were working on a PhD at the time. Now, do you need to do another PhD to get them back in?
Maybe.
Are you willing to undertake that?
If it'll get us a bit of improvement, I'm happy to do whatever it takes, James. Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. Another PhD.
Ask John Roscombe, is that all right? just asking.
All right. Now, my third and possibly most out of the box thing, as I said, this is an external review. And sometimes when countries bog down, you need to bring in an outsider. Like when America starts bogging down, you bring in Donald Trump.
Okay.
You just need someone to throw a cat among the pigeons.
You know Donald Trump's American, don't you?
Yeah, but he's an outsider to the political system.
Yeah.
And the political system wasn't working.
I was like, maybe Bolt doesn't realise. Anyway.
I'm aware of that.
I'll take your point.
Now, there is no one more outsider to the Deaners than me.
Yeah.
In the world.
Mate,
do not care. I love you. I don't care about the Deaners. And I will not go to a trivia night. But you need an outsider. So I am now hereby offering to coach the Deaners.
I have been trying to get you down for years, James. Not as a coach.
I'm not going to play. I'm not going to play or watch, but I will coach.
Look, that's fine with me. I'll speak to Harry. He listens to the podcast sometimes.
Yeah, there's so many Deaners that listen. If you want to anonymously suggest what's going on with the Deaners, jbolt@ipa.org.au.
This person seems to know a lot about what's going on.
I'll never send what's happening to Pete.
Yeah, okay.
Unless it's funny.
So, look, I'll ask.
Okay, cool. I'm happy to coach the Deaners for a day.
Okay.
And I will come down on him. It's going to go, I can't remember his name, but yeah, it's going to be a scene. Anyway, that is it for the show this week.
Yep.
jbolt@ipa.org.au. Let's unpack the Deaners. And thank you to Bridget Phetasy. Thank you to Dave Sharma. Who won the quiz? Pat
Hadford.
Oh, Pat.
Despite his misbehaviour.
Get those lips ready for a kiss under the ring. If you are listening through Apple,
not that sort of podcast.
If you are listening through Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving us a 5-star review. We're also on the Young IPA Podcast YouTube channel. So make sure you're telling your friends and family that prefer to watch podcasts rather than listen to them about that. And we're also available on Facebook. And if you are, I did the 5-star review thing. Cool. All right. See you guys next week.
See ya. Thanks, Saul. Even though you stuffed up a lot. Thanks. Bye.